Bloomberg News.
Legendary global investor Jim Rogers, the author of A Gift to My Children, and he joins me now. First of all, Mr. Rogers, thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning.
I'm delighted to be here.
Let's take a look at Greece. So you actually think that there shouldn't be a bailout, that the IMF shouldn't be called in? What are your thoughts?
Do you? I mean, you think that that good, hard-working Germans and Austrians and Frenchmen should go in and pay for people who've been spending money they didn't have and lying about it?
Well, it certainly looks like the Germans think that now. It seems like there is a split.
I think that, and I would think everybody would think that. Why should you support people who've been living high on the hog on somebody else's money for a long time? By the way, I think it would be good for Greece. I think it would be good for the euro if they let them go bankrupt, and then people would understand we're going to have a sound currency. We're not going to let people play fast and loose with accounting and spending, and then the euro would go through the roof, in my view. It's not going to happen that way, but that's the way it should happen.
If it did happen that way, would Greece stay within the euro? They would have to go out, right?
Well, they'd probably have to go out of the euro, but they wouldn't have to. No, they would not have to. They probably would because their politicians would want to. But look, if one of the American states went bankrupt, a small state in America went bankrupt, it wouldn't be the end of the U.S. It wouldn't be the end of the U.S. dollar. I mean, if Idaho went bankrupt, who would care? No, the euro could survive, the EU could survive, Greece could survive, we all could survive.
It does show, though, doesn't it, that this kind of one-size-fits-all idea if the euro isn't really working. You know, it's quite difficult for anyone to persuade German consumers at home to spend and have more of a southern European model, and similarly, it seems very hard to persuade the southern European states to copy the German model.
Well, okay, but the southern European states, if they want to be competitive, they're going to have to copy a hard-working, saving, and not spending a model. That's the way the world works, whether they like it or not. If they don't like that, perhaps they shouldn't be in the euro, and perhaps they shouldn't be in the EU for that matter. But that's the way the world works. Had you rather be as successful as Germany or as unsuccessful as Greece? I'd rather be as successful as Germany.
Now, let's look at the euro as a currency. Last year that you said that sterling was finished. Would you rather at the moment be in sterling or be in euros?
I own the euro. I do not own sterling. I have no position in sterling, long nor short. I do own the euro, have massive amounts of short positions in the euro, and so I usually like to be on the other side of big short positions. And I think they will probably paper this crisis over. I don't think they should paper it over, but they probably will. And if they do, the euro will look better for a while.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about credit default swaps and the pressure that that's put on Greece. Do you think that speculators have actually made things worse?
Andrea, the speculators didn't run up 12% deficits of gross national product. The speculators didn't run up huge debts. Greek politicians did that. The Greek nation did that. No, speculators aren't causing this. You know, if suddenly somebody discovers a gold mine, people go in and buy those shares. If somebody's going bankrupt, people go in and invest accordingly. That's the way the world works. You can't blame this on the speculators. The speculators are reacting to what the Greeks themselves have done.
So what would you say then to European leaders who are saying, let's ban credit default swaps entirely?
Well, they're nuts. I mean, right now, credit default swaps are good for Greece because people will buy their bonds because they can protect themselves with a credit default swap. It will just make things worse if you try to ban these things. But politicians don't normally understand how the world works. That's why they're politicians.
Now, let's have a little chat about sterling. You've made it very clear that you don't own sterling.
Nor am I short.
And is that something that you're happy with? Is that something you'll continue to do? Just literally not touch the currency?
I doubt if I will own sterling in my lifetime. I think things are pretty bad for sterling for the long term. The balance of trade has been in deficit for 25 years. I see nothing to change that. I see that continuing to get worse. So I cannot, I sold my sterling a couple of years ago. I cannot imagine buying sterling back unless it gets very, very, very cheap.
A hung parliament could perhaps be a reason why it would get cheap? Are you looking at that?
Yeah, but I think it would have to get, no, that wouldn't be cheap enough.
How cheap's cheap?
Under $1, you know, way down. So no, if it got really, really, really cheap, then of course everything would be better, but that's not anytime soon, I don't think.
Moving on to equities, if we look at the FTSE, it's increased hugely over the past year. Do you think that equities generally are overvalued at the moment? Well,
I'm not buying equities anywhere in the world right now because just as you say, they've all skyrocketed for the last 12 months, actually 12 months almost exactly. So I'm not buying anything. I don't like to buy stocks after they've gone up a lot. If they correct, which I suspect they will before too much longer, then I might buy some more stocks again.
What kind of a correction would you be looking for?
I'm not that good. Watch Bloomberg. People on Bloomberg every day who can answer that question. I don't know. We'll see. If it goes down 20 or 30%, that would probably raise my interest.
Jim, it's no secret that you're very bullish on gold. What are your thoughts on that commodity at the moment? Can you see it continuing?
Well, I own gold, yes, and I have for a long time. I expect the gold to go much higher over the next decade or so because paper money all over the world is under suspicion, if nothing else, and it's actually being printed everywhere. I don't think I would buy gold today, but if it goes down, I'll probably buy more. Actually, if it goes up, Andrea, I might buy more as well.
No, sorry, explain that one to me. If it goes up,
well, if it starts going up because America bombs Iran, then I'll probably buy more. I mean, if it goes up for some fundamental reasons, which would make me think, it's not going to go down anymore, then I would have to jump on as it went up. I'd rather buy it going down.
Let's talk a little bit about selling gold. There are some other commodities around at the moment that are very cheap, particularly things like wheat, grain, soya, things like that. Any thoughts about swapping out of gold and going into those commodities?
Well, my approach is I will own gold, and I will continue to own gold, and I do buy more agricultural commodities when they get really cheap, or try to when they get really cheap. Agricultural commodities are much cheaper than most other things in the world these days, so I had rather put new positions in agriculture than gold, but as I say, if gold goes down, I'll buy more. But I'm not selling my gold.
Okay.
I'm not selling any commodities.
Okay. Now, on a personal level, you've got a very interesting story, actually. You started when you were very little, always an entrepreneur, but you worked incredibly hard. I think you didn't take very many holidays or breaks or whatever, and at the age of 37, you kind of said, right, that's it. A lot of people who make a lot of money don't find it easy to say, okay, I've got enough, I'm going to go around adventuring. What made you be able to do that?
All my life, I'd wanted to see the world. I'd wanted to have adventure. And when I was 37, I had a little bit of money, so I decided, okay, I have enough money now. Now I'm going to have a different life. I always wanted to have more than one life. I didn't want to wake up when I was 75, still in front of a Bloomberg machine somewhere. I wanted to do other things. You know, I don't need a lot of money. I'm a simple person, and so I set out to have adventure.
You had great adventures. You've written about them. What did they teach you in terms of investing?
Well, that the world is always changing, for one thing, and the other thing is that whatever you read in the press or even see on Bloomberg, it's probably not correct. The best thing to do is go out there into the world and see the world close to the ground, see it from the ground up, and then you will find out what's really happening, and you will see it long before the journalists and the politicians will see it, and then you can act.
Do you worry that so many people today have actually got very much a working culture where they don't feel that they can even take their holiday allocation, leave alone take some time off and have a look around?
You know, of course I worry about it. I don't like it. I have friends who are my age who are still sitting in front of their machines and they won't go anywhere. You know, we sold our house recently in New York and moved to Asia, and people think I'm nuts. You know, they can't conceive of giving up the life they have and sitting there working away like that and doing something else. Well, maybe I'm nuts. But I always want to have more than one life.
Now, you have just moved. You've moved to Singapore. You've got 2 young kids. They're settled there. You've recently written a book called A Gift to My Children. Now, you've already given them quite an interesting gift because, as I understand it, since they were babies, they've been learning to speak Mandarin. How's that coming along?
They both speak Mandarin like natives. If you didn't see them, if you heard them on the phone, you would think that they were Chinese. It's pretty amazing. You hear people, or see people talk to these little girls and then look and see these little blue-eyed girls with blonde hair speaking Mandarin, but they're doing it.
So you chose to bring them up bilingually, which is a really strong, you know, you're making a very strong choice there to say China's going to be the future, right?
The 21st century will be the century of China, in my view, and that's why I'm trying to prepare them by the best skill that I can give these little girls, I think, is to speak Mandarin and to know Asia. I think in their lifetimes, that will be the best that I can do for them, as far as skills are concerned.
Do you travel to China much yourself?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I go to China a few times every year.
And what are your thoughts on China at the moment? What are your thoughts on the yuan?
Well, China's booming because they've got a lot of money and they're spending a lot of money. They're having a bubble in coastal urban real estate, if you ask me. There are some things that are a little too hot in China, but they know that. They're trying to cool things off. No, the future is still China. Now, there will be huge setbacks along the way. I don't know when or why, but there always are. And if those setbacks occur, I'm not going to stop teaching my children Chinese, first of all. And second, I hope I'm smart enough to act.
And what about the rest of Southeast Asia? What do you think? How is the economy recovering there? Quite quickly.
Oh, well, yeah. Everywhere I go in Southeast Asia, you go to Hong Kong, Singapore, you go over the places I go. No, you wouldn't know that there was a recession. You wouldn't know that there'd been hard times.
Now, your latest book is called A Gift to a Father's, a Gift to My Children, right? You sort of have written it giving tips about investment and tips about life. What are your greatest tips about investment for all of us?
Buy low and sell high. No,
to
expand on that, well, be skeptical. Don't believe anything you read or hear. Do your own homework, do your own research, and do a lot of it. And then, if you see that the world is wrong, and it usually is, or the markets are often wrong, then you can act and do something. So I would say be skeptical, be persistent, and be hardworking.
It does take a lot of guts, though, to watch everybody else doing it one way and decide that you think they're all wrong and you're going to do it your own way. Is that something that you've done over the years?
I've done it many times, and you're right. I sometimes get it right, sometimes I get it wrong. But that's why I say to my little girls and to everybody, do a lot of homework, do a lot of research, so you know that what you're doing is right, that the market is wrong.
One of the other things that you talk about is the importance of due diligence going forward. Is that something that you still do yourself with your investments?
Well, I hope I do as much as I used to. I know, though, that the facts are I don't do as much as I used to because I'm lazy and I've got my little girls and do other things. But I still try to do my homework to be sure. But I still make mistakes, just like I always have.
And when you make mistakes, I think you've said that you actually are inclined to put small positions on. So if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world.
Right. That's how I start out. Yes.
And so that's one of your other philosophies for how you do this, Jake.
Well, it has worked so far. I mean, everybody has their own way. I know people who put huge amounts on in the beginning, and then if they're right, of course, they get even more benefit. I start small, feel my way, and try to make sure that I'm right, and then act. Now, when I'm wrong, I wish I had a way out. I don't use stop losses. I don't particularly like stop losses for some reason. And usually I just wind up panicking like everybody else and taking a big loss.
Now, of course, one thing that you put in your book that's possibly universal, I can tell you've got two girls because on the cover it says, beware of boys.
Well, yes, I was a boy. I was a pretty bad boy, as a matter of fact. So I've been trying to teach these little girls, be careful of the boys. The boys need you more than you need them, and you should learn that at an early age. You're a female. You probably know that, too.
Jim Rogers, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Hear more Bloomberg News reports on the Bloomberg Terminal at AV Go, on Bloomberg Television, and on Bloomberg Radio. Copyright Bloomberg LP 2010.